In this video, you will see how using SPM makes it easy to transform strategy descriptions, perhaps coming from high levels of the organization, into rules that get embedded in the simulation, thus allowing you to perform what-if analysis as well as optimization of the long-term effects of such strategies. You will learn how to investigate the effects of constraints, such as limited budget or resources, and how to try out alternative strategies for handling such constraints, how to automatically search for good asset prioritization strategies by using the SPM Optimizer companion tool, how to define and assess deal-making strategies, and how to compare strategies. We start from the scenario in the previous videos. I'll reorder and deselect some reports so we can focus on the budget, total launches, and total revenues. Let's make this scenario more realistic. Instead of starting from an empty portfolio, we will mimic a real one by using the initial streams, which I've set up to be the same as the internal ones, except for generating different numbers of assets. The initial streams are used only once to fill the initial portfolio. Let's run the simulation with our original budget, which is large enough to allow us to work on all our assets. The blue bars show there are money left at the end of each year. We get about 80 total launches and corresponding revenues. Now suppose we actually have a significantly smaller budget of only about 500 million. We run the simulation again and see that there are no money left and the total number of launches is now in the mid-50s. The revenues have also dropped. We suspect this is because some assets are put on hold when we don't have enough money to work on all of them. Let's check this by enabling the Unresourced Assets report. We run again. And indeed, we see we can have as many as 80 Phase 1 assets on hold at a time. And, as the blue bars show, occasionally we even have Phase 2 assets on hold. At this point, we may wonder if there is anything we could do differently so as to increase our launches and perhaps our revenues given the constrained budget. In this video, we will try two different approaches, changing our portfolio management strategy and doing some outsourcing. We start with the former. SPM figures out which assets to put on hold by using a default portfolio management strategy based on asset prioritization. You can change various aspects of this strategy from the Policies Prioritization tab. In particular, assets are ordered using a score that is the weighted average of three quantities: how close the asset is to launch, the asset's net present value, and how the asset contributes to overall portfolio balance. Additionally, an asset attribute called Pet Project is also used in the prioritization. When there aren't enough money or resources for all assets, those with higher priority are resourced first. Additional mechanisms can be enabled, such as selling low-priority assets for cash to be allocated to high-priority assets. In addition to allowing manual adjustment of the resource allocation strategy, SPM also comes with a companion optimizer tool that can, amongst other things, automatically search for a triplet of score weights that maximizes number of launches. Let's save this as our baseline scenario, to which we will compare alternatives, and then go to the optimizer and load it in. We specify we want to search for prioritization weights and click Start. We accept the warning about prior results being overwritten. The optimizer will try out various combinations of score weights, each time running multiple seeds of the simulation behind the scenes to get the expected total number of launches. The list will display all combinations tried, and the chart will show each time a new best combination is found. Here's what it may look like after some time. We can find the best performing combination by sorting the average launches column. We see some details about yearly launches as averaged over multiple seeds. This combination gives more weight to time to launch. Let's export it as an SPM scenario file. I'll make a new folder called Strategies and call the file Optimized Prioritization Weights. We can now further investigate this using the main tool. We load the file and check that indeed the prioritization weights have been adjusted. We run the scenario to generate our detailed reports. Later in the video, we will do a side-by-side comparison with our baseline scenario. For that, we need to save our file to include these reports. We accept the override. So now we've seen how to try out various portfolio management or asset prioritization strategies. Let's now try an outsourcing strategy. Since so many assets are simply sitting on hold, what if we were to find partners to work on these assets, splitting 50-50 both the costs and the revenues should assets make it to market? We can test this strategy in SPM as follows. Let's start from our baseline scenario again. Under the Policies tab, we click on Asset Shedding and then after Max Days in Queue. Here we have a rule specifying what should happen to an asset if it has been on hold for more than a certain amount of time, in this case, a year. The default rule is to do nothing, that is, continue to keep the asset on hold. So let's rename this rule Do Nothing. Now let's create a new rule to describe our outsourcing policy. Click the green plus button and rename it to 50-50 deal. At the bottom of the page, we specify what the rule actually does. From this combo box, we select Sell and then set the details of the deal. For now, we'll be optimistic and assume that we will always find a partner, so probability of success 100%. Also set the share of revenues given up to 50%, and then reduce our commitment to costs both before and after the launch to 50%. We then click the yellow star button to select this rule as the one being used by the simulation and click the Run button. Inspecting the reports, it would appear that our launches are a bit up compared to our baseline, close to 60 now, but our revenues seem to have decreased a little. We also see that we still have assets on hold, but it's at most about a dozen. Of course, a single simulation run is not enough to draw any conclusions, so let's perform a more thorough comparison. First, we set the number of Cs to 20. Then, from the Run menu, we choose Run Parameter Sweep. The two rules show up automatically. We check both of them, and let's also rename our sweep to something like Deal Comparison. We also click the Pick Directory button to select where output files should be saved. Then click Run. SPM will now run the default Do Nothing scenario 20 times and save a file with the results, then run the 50-50 deal scenario 20 times and save that. We can refer to the progress bar and the title of this dialog to track progress. The dialog will let us know when the sweep is done. I'll skip forward to that. We click OK. The charts display that of the last scenario that was run. To do a comparison, we go to the Run menu and choose Compare Saved Scenarios. We navigate to the folder we specified when we set up the sweep, and amongst the files generated by the sweep, select the ones that have results in the name, as well as the file we produced with the optimizer. To select multiple files, depending on your operating system, hold down the Command or Control key while clicking. Click Open and minimize the settings panel so we can see the charts better. For each time period, there are now 3 sets of bars, one corresponding to each of the 3 scenario files that we loaded. In this case, on the left, we have the outsourcing strategy, in the middle, the default Do Nothing case, and on the right, the optimized prioritization strategy. You can check that by looking at the legend.csv file that the sweeper also produced. We see some differences between the strategies, both for launches and for revenues. To say anything with confidence, we would export the data behind the report and perform a statistical significance test. At first glance, though, it would appear that both the outsourcing strategy and the asset prioritization strategy lead to more launches. But for revenues, the outsourcing strategy appears to do the same or worse than the baseline, whereas the asset prioritization strategy appears to do the same or better. It also appears that the outsourcing strategy has the highest variance, whereas the asset prioritization strategy has the lowest variance, and low variance is a desirable property for any strategy. These results are specific to the scenario that I investigated and are not to be generalized. Rather, the take-home message is that you can use SPM to test and compare a really wide range of strategies for your specific situation. For instance, starting from our deal strategy, we could refine it by adding a condition to our rule so that only assets from a particular therapeutic area are partnered out. With SPM, you can also define rules for acquiring assets, rules that are triggered when an asset reaches a given milestone, rules to change the amount of resources or the budget, either over time by using the year variable, as well as adaptively based on overall properties of our portfolio. We can also define rules that change the development properties of our assets and do so adaptively based on various asset properties.